Welcome back to another episode of Sick I Swear. I'm your host, Caitlin Rohde, and you guys, I am so excited to dive into this week's episode. We have Dr. Akilah Cadet here. She is the founder and CEO of Change Cadet. She's a leader, a speaker, a creative director. She's a writer, author of White Supremacy is All Around. Get the book. She literally has all the degrees. She celebrates her disability and she is a very proud Beyonce advocate, which, side note, how do you feel about Beyonce's Grammy wins?
I just love when Black women are able to do things that they're not supposed to do. And I really wish the Taylor Swift fans were kinder.
Oh, I'm a huge Swiftie over here, but I will give it to Beyonce.
Swifties are great. Just so y'all know, Taylor has 4 albums of the year. Beyonce's the most decorated, nominated Grammy artist in history, and she's never won that. It's only one. So just to all the Swifties out there, it's only one.
Perspective. Okay, so I found you, for people that don't know, I was a part, we finished it up, of the Ehlers-Danlos Society Echo program for advocacy, and you were a speaker one week, and I was just like so pulled to you. I think your message and everything that you have to say and speak about is so important. And I was like, I need Dr. Cadet on this podcast to shed some light onto some way too important things, especially everything that's going on in the world currently. I want to hear a little bit about your diagnoses first.
Sure. So I just for folks who want to learn a little bit more about the journey, I do talk about it in the book, but I have a rare connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Hence, you saw me at the Ehlers-Danlos Society Echo presentation thing. And essentially, my body just doesn't know what to do with collagen. Collagen is in everything in your body, from your organs to your ligaments, your joints. And I always have to remind people that your skin is an organ, so it impacts skin too. So I bruise easily, I get cuts really easily. It takes a long time to heal. I have joints that dislocate or partially dislocate, and that happens weekly. There are 13 types of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and then there's hypermobility spectrum disorder. So kind of like a 14th type. Reclassification is coming soon, but the type I have is myopathic Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and less than 1 in a million people have that. So I have a rare thing, but I have a rarer version of the rare thing. Um, so in addition to like those dislocations and partial dislocations, um, it affects my heart. So the arteries in my heart just close whenever they want, causes chest pain and mimics a heart attack. So I get what feels like a mini heart attack every day. And I can have a heart attack and die at any moment in time. That has not happened. Me and my cardiologist don't want it to happen either. But that's how it shows up to me. When you have EDS, you typically have lots of other comorbidities because again, it affects those organs, right? So I have close to 20 health conditions that I navigate. 5 of them are rare.
How hard was it for you to get the diagnoses?
It wasn't hard. It wasn't
No,
hard. Um, the acceptance of it or getting it?
getting it.
There's getting it. It took me, well, I got diagnosed. My journey's a little different. So, um, when my heart stuff started about, it'll be 8 years this year, um, I was getting pain in my left arm and my left leg. And so it took about a year and a half to make sure that it wasn't happening for my heart and it wasn't neurological. And then after that, someone told me a long time ago about Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't have that because I have heart things. I was focused on the heart things. And if you look for a vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it is not what I have. It's your veins and arteries are basically like paper. It's just really, 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 really hard to live with. And I didn't have those symptoms, and so I was doing some digging with the Ehlers-Danlos Society. I found the Brighton scale or the Brighton score, and I was like, "Hey, primary doc, can we can we do this? And I passed with flying colors, which meant I had hypermobile, which is the general type, hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Right now, there isn't a gene connected to that. Um, and so that happened right away. My doctor will tell you that I diagnosed myself with EDS and she just signed off on the paperwork so I can like get genetics testing and do all the other stuff. So it was relatively quick in the big scheme of things. There are people who have EDS who are diagnosed in their teens and they get pretty lucky because they know how to navigate their life. But most people, they don't know until later in life.
Hmm.
And they've done a lot of things that could be considered risky, like pregnancy or zip lining, and so I'm happy in a way that I was in my 30s when I was diagnosed. I was also diagnosed for the Ehlers-Danlos Awareness Month. So I was like, well, that's always good. So marketing and branding for me for the rest of my life is great with EDS.
Okay, so then when it came to the acceptance, was it acceptance within yourself or acceptance within like medical community?
No, it was just that I told you so because I knew something was wrong with me. Of course, there's sadness that naturally happens when um, you like realize that you have something for the rest of your life. And um, for me, EDS solidified the disability I already knew I had because I became disabled with my heart stuff. So but then I have progressive disability. So things change over time for me. Things that I have in addition to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome um, are just attacking my body daily. And I'm doing all that I can to keep the independence that I have. So there's grief that comes with that. But I love being right. And I was right.
That's very Virgo of you.
Yes. Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
Let's get into like your background.
Okay.
Doctor. Doctor in what?
Yeah. So I have a doctorate in health science, leadership, and organizational behavior that I received at a med school. So my previous life, I was a health administrator. So I was working with physicians and nurses and providers and administrators and running clinics and hospitals and health systems. That was my past life. And so um, I look what I look like now, but imagine me 10 years ago. So it'll be 10 years since I have this year that I've had my doctorate, and no one wanted to listen to me. So I figured if I get this doctorate, because I'm at this table with all these powerful folks, then they'll have to listen to me, which they did, essentially. But yeah, so that's why I have a doctorate. My undergrad is, it's my undergrad. I was pre-med. My undergrad is health science, leadership, and organizational behavior. And then I have a master's in public health. And so all three degrees I have are in health science. And quite frankly, it's what allows me to, in addition to being a health administrator, in addition to working on health reform here at one of the most prolific health departments in the country, has allowed me to be my best patient advocate.
Which, I mean, I'm sure that that education behind you kind of added a layer of like, okay, take me serious here.
Yeah, I mean, there's times where I've literally, and I talk about some of these stories in the book too, where I'm being disrespected in the emergency room. I have to go to the emergency room all the time because that's the only way to know if I'm having cardiac muscle death. If I can't use, I take heart medication every day, but if my um, heart spasm is really bad, I have to take nitroglycerin. And if that doesn't work, I have to go to the emergency room. So I'm always there. And I have to remind people that I am their peer and I'm their colleague. And so I have to introduce myself. And once they know that I know as much as them or more than them, or the thing they don't know more of, right, which is patient rights, um, then the care can shift, or I'll ask for another physician.
What are some of the most significant barriers you've had to overcome in the medical community as a Black woman?
I'm a Black person and I'm a woman and I'm also disabled. So, I'm not a heterosexual, non-disabled, cisgender white dude when it comes down to it. In addition to advocating for myself, I'm an activist. I advocate for others too. But you have to remember in US, in America, pain is not believed of Black people. Black pain is not believed. It is definitely not believed for Black women. And so pain shows up in so many ways. Like I'm in physical pain all the time, but there's pain in having to advocate for yourself all the time. There's pain in having to kind of tell the story over and over again so people can understand, or when I'm advocating for other folks, there's a lot in there, but people don't believe me. So for example, with the Ehlers-Danlos Society, I talk about the story all the time, they know, but I'm a member of the board there, and the Ehlers-Danlos Society is the foremost organization in the world for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And they were so excited about my book, they put it on their Instagram, which I loved. And I was like, oh, that's great. Feeling supported. And that post is still there if anyone wants to dig in the crates and go deep down and find it. But it received so much hate because I'm a Black woman who's disabled as a result of EDS too. But Black pain isn't believed. Well, why do you care about her story? It took me 10 years to be diagnosed. Why do you care about her? It doesn't matter. Why are you making it about race? It's not about race. Everyone suffers with EDS. Not realizing that when I have gone to urgent care because my back pain is out of control, I have a hypermobile spine and I also have rare arthritis in my spine. I've literally been told we won't see you because you have EDS.
What are you
And
supposed to
that's
do?
not go to the emergency room. And I like to avoid the emergency room because when I go to the emergency room, they think I'm a drug seeker, or,
Yep.
they think I'm looking for narcotics. They don't believe my pain. And that's even having all of these classifications, all these diagnoses in the chart. There's a time I was going to the emergency room every month until I could get diagnosed and have better plan for my medical care, right? And so people don't see how intersectionality comes into play with my existence as an advocate activist, someone who works in the space, and as someone who lives in a very, very rare, very painful body.
So people can kind of get an idea currently sitting right now. What is your pain like? Where do you experience it? Obviously, it's all over
Mm.
pain, but
Yeah, it's all over pain. That's a really great question. No one's ever asked me that. My lower back was on fire.
mhm.
I have a pinched nerve on the left side of my neck, and so turning is uncomfortable. My first rib on my left side is sublux, which means it's partially dislocated, which means that adds to why my pinched nerve thing is happening in my neck. My shoulder on my left side is being pulled out because of my rib, because it's affecting the muscles. And so my shoulder has come out a lot in the past 2.5 weeks. And then my entire arm is tired, left arm, as a result of that. And I'm currently wearing a black compression glove because three joints are partially dislocating as a result of everything being pulled out on my left side. So on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm probably like a 4.5, 5 right now. I also can't take pain meds during the day because I'm a founder and CEO of a business and I consult and I have to drive my car later. I'm a like 4.5 right now, 5 because um I'm went to sleep with a muscle relaxer. So like coming out from that. But as I sit here at my desk, and as I hold my head up,
Mhm.
things will get worse by the end of the day. So yeah. And then I realized I didn't do a descriptor for those who are listening. I am a beautiful, stunning Black woman. I have a lighter complexion and hazel eyes. My hair is curly, but it's on top of my head. And I'm wearing a white crewneck sweatshirt that says white supremacies all around. And
Period.
I'm sitting in my office. Yeah. Behind me, you'll see two, um, for those who are tuning in, there are two portraits of my dog who's passed away, and he always was in my office and bookshelf. That includes my book, of course.
Mm.
So yeah,
Stunning indeed. For your lower back pain, do you have a lot of SI joint problems?
I do. I have SI joint dysfunction.
do you get injections into your spine for it?
I have, I have, I have received lots of different types of injections. I've had trigger point injections. I've had PRP. I've had exploratory things that my doctor at UCSF has put together in a little cocktail to stick in to lower back, SI joints. But I am currently on pause with injections because I am on my fifth or sixth month of a biologic, fifth month of a biologic. For those who are listening, a biologic is basically a live thing that you're putting in your body to stop something. So in my case, I also have ankylosing spondylitis, which is a rare type of um, arthritis of the spine. It's known as bamboo spine. So essentially, every day my spine is trying to fuse together, it's getting stuck. And so biologics are ways to off put um, and potentially either stop or delay the onset of my spine fusing together. So I started a new one, so I have to like give it 3 more months to see if it's improved my back pain. If it doesn't, then I'll go back to having injections.
I think it's kind of an obvious question, but let's hear it from you. What initially led you to the advocacy work?
I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. I posted something one day on Instagram after the murder of George Floyd, and that garnered a lot of attention. That was happening when I already knew I had my heart stuff, but um, I was still figuring out um, the other things to get to EDS. The following year, I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome. May 21 is when I was diagnosed with that. And so then I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna talk about EDS and talk about, like disability because intersectionality is a big part into dismantling white supremacy. And that's why the book is called White Supremacy is All Around. I experience it, at work. I experience it at the hospital. I experience it in the emergency room. I experience it at the cafe, the restaurant. There's so many places that I experience white supremacy. And if we were to dismantle white supremacy, we wouldn't have ableism. We wouldn't have racism, sexism, homophobia, trans, xenophobia. We wouldn't have those things. We wouldn't have those things. Xenophobia. We wouldn't have those things. Patriarchy would be gone too. Right. So, but we do. We do. And so I realized that my body could help people figure that out. So, with my light skin privilege, with my doctorate, how I sound to people is more comfortable. Being pretty, having pretty privilege, um, you know, and again, being a woman, a Black person, and a disabled person, I was able to bring all these things together to help people learn and unlearn through um, all of the allyship workshops I had to do and all of the uh, bias, microaggression workshops I had to do for years after the murder of George Floyd.
Okay, so that brings me into medical racism and biases.
Hmm.
How do you experience and witness medical racism in your practice and in your day-to-day
Yeah,
experience?
I see it all day, every day. So in a beauty brand that I work with, it's because they didn't have shade inclusion with whatever the thing was. With healthcare, I see it with having someone go into the emergency room who also has chest pain and also had an irregular EKG, but they get admitted and I don't, right? I see it when it took me 2 years to be treated for 2.5 years to be treated for ankylosing spondylitis. And I saw it with every rheumatologist I saw. They're like, no, you don't really have pain. You're fine. And enough for things to progress to a point where when I finally got to the rheumatologist I have now, she was like, just so you know, if you were on biologic a while ago, you wouldn't have these things you have now. And I was like, you don't have to tell me that. I already know, but I can't prescribe myself biologics. The rheumatologist has to do that, right? And so, it's just literally all around. That's why I say white supremacy is all around. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And it's a very, very incredibly frustrating thing to have to navigate on top of my existence, on top of the pain that I'm in, on top of the management of these conditions that I have. It's not fair, you know?
No, not at all. It's not fair.
No.
What advice do you have for Black disabled individuals who are struggling to be heard by their doctor?
I mean, this it goes for anyone, because when you aren't being heard, it's all the same thing, right? It's just all the same thing. It can obviously be further compounded by, um, your ethnicity or your appearance, your educational level, all these things. Having an accent or English as a second language, all of that can compound it, but you don't have to be with that doctor. So there's that, right? But the biggest trick that everyone should use is when you ask for something like, "Hey, I want to do the bite and score. I want to see if I have, EDS, or I want to do this blood test." And they say no, all you have to say is, "Please notate in the chart that you do not want to do this." But you need it in the chart because once you ask them to write it in the chart and someone else diagnoses you with that, another doctor in another practice, another space or place, then they know they could be held liable because they didn't do the thing that diagnosed you with the thing. So typically, if you get to that point, they'll say, okay, fine, I'll run the blood test. Okay, fine, we'll do the imaging, you know, and that's how you can be empowered. The second thing is to know your patient rights. Look it up. Use Google as a search tool to know what your patient rights are because you have them. Do not feel that you need to be bullied by physicians. They are not always right. Doctors are not always right, myself included. They're not always right. And so make sure you know your patient rights there. And then last, if the provider that you're seeing is a fucking asshole, then report them, right? So you can do that. You can report them to the practice, that health insurance company, or whatever, that health system, that provider. You can report them to the board. Um, you can review them. You can do those things, but find someone else. There is another doctor there. It is very frustrating. It does take more time, but you can find someone else.
Yeah, I think so often, especially people who are just like not very far into their journey, just think that doctors are always right or they have the right answer or they know the right treatment. And oftentimes that's not true. It is trial and error. We know that. Um, yeah, I think that advice is really good for people of color and then also just people with disability in general to document.
Particularly when you have chronic illness, chronic pain, rare disease, disability, that you are the expert of your body. You live in that body 24/7. So you know when something is wrong. You're like, okay, I'm used to this level of pain, but this level of pain is not this is no, this is not okay. And so use that as your compass and as your guide to keep moving forward, as frustrating as it may be, as many tears you may shed, or the months you've had to wait for that subspecialty or specialty appointment. Um, you know, listen to your body.
So a little switch of the subject, kind of not really. We scheduled this prior to the carousel of fuckery that unfolded after January
Mm.
20th. We knew it was going to be bad. I didn't realize how bad things were going to start to unfold this quickly. How do you think the policies are going to affect DEI and people and BIPOC?
I mean, it's already happening. It's pretty bad. So, day one saying you can't be trans and all this is being fought in courts is not okay. But it's a very strong, powerful message saying, we don't support this wonderful group of people, right? And then subsequently after that, it was the and banning via the executive order for DEI, right? So I don't think people realize that we're not even to the healthcare side, right, of things, and things are really, really bad. And so right now in research in US, you can't say certain words like women, anti-racism, underrepresented, underserved. You can't say anything that would be a descriptor word for essentially oppressed groups when it comes to research right now in this country. So last year is the first time money was allocated by the federal government to research women's health. And that was done championing by Dr. Jill Biden. And what people don't realize is that women's health hasn't been thoroughly studied, which is why things like menopause or how heart stuff manifests in women is kind of unknown. And so it's generally unknown. There's just no really looking at kind of the full life cycle of a woman, right? That's gone, you know. So if you identify as a woman, that's gone. Um, they have James David and Donald have made promises to get rid of pre-existing conditions. So if you have your own health care that's outside of Medicare, Medicaid, you could potentially lose your health care because if you're like me and have multiple comorbidities, multiple health conditions, an insurance company will have the right again to say, like, we don't want to insure you. Or if we do, it's going to be really, really expensive, you know? So those are the things that are coming. And so intersectionality, the intersections of our identity, who we are, all of it is coming to play with this current regime and what they are wanting to do. Everything is leaning towards heterosexual, non-disabled, cisgendered white men, right? And I say that specifically because that excludes everyone you reach on this podcast, right? So once you are sick, once you have a disability, once you have chronic illness or chronic pain, you are no longer part of the group that they want here, that they want taken care of. You now become a person who is a burden, which is why in our community, chronic illness, pain, disabled community, there's a lot of people who are stressed. There are a lot of people who are flaring. There are a lot of people who are worried that they aren't going to get the care that they deserve. I mean, just for perspective, the biologic I take is $7,400 a month. And I have a platinum PPO, and I'm fortunate and privileged to have a platinum PPO, which is the highest you can get. But even with the highest you can get, it's considered a tier four drug, meaning it's super expensive. My copay is still $250 a month, right? And so I'm appreciative of, like, you know, patient advocacy and patient support programs. So I don't pay that much every month. But if I don't have health care, I'm not going to be able to afford that,
Hmm.
which means my spine will fuse together.
Hmm.
And I think about that every day. And I definitely think about that every time I inject myself. Right. And so there's people who are concerned about that. People who are concerned about their medication that they take or procedure or surgery that they need. That it's already hard to get in today's existing healthcare structure. Right. So, you know, it's beyond concerning, and it's just incredibly frustrating, which is why I do the work that I do. I think it's really important for people to see leaders who come in this intersectionality around disability or chronic illness. Um, because if we had those leaders, let's just say we had Kamala Harris in this position, although we don't know any of the ailments that she has, she watched her mom die from cancer. So there's more empathy, there's more sympathy that is there. I would know that my healthcare would not be affected by having her in office. But I knew if Donald Trump won, that my healthcare would be affected, that my existence would be affected. So again, going back to intersectionality, I have all this stuff that I navigate with health, but um, white supremacists don't like me. So they send things only as of right now, it's just been through DMs or comments on social media. Some have found my email address and they've sent some pretty horrific things to me. That's not fun. And with my EDS and with my heart condition, I am not supposed to have stress. The stress can cause an actual heart attack. And I can die any day. I can die just easily by something. And so there's there's only so much white supremacist hate that I can take before it becomes stressful.
How do you manage? What's the self-care around that to make sure you don't get too stressed to flare yourself up?
I use a lot of humor. I use a lot of sarcasm. But I really don't like going outside. Honestly, I do go outside. I have to go outside today, but I go because I have something to do. I have like work to do. Like I don't grocery shop. I don't do a lot of things that folks do. Because the safest supportive space for me is my home. Once I go outside, it's either physically not designed for me, emotionally not designed for me because of ableism or racism or sexism. And for folks who are like, oh, I feel like you're being dramatic. I am not. I am not being dramatic. Just yesterday, I was on a plane for Alaska Airlines. Alaska Airlines is one of the better airlines for supporting people with disabilities and visible or invisible. And I was just standing in line and they're like, hey, the plane's late. So, it's going to take at least 10 minutes to deboard the plane. You don't have to stand here. And I was like, okay. Because I like to get in position so I can get on the plane and sit
Hmm.
down. So you don't like have a heart attack. The airport is the worst place for me to be. And those are the words of my cardiologist. And so was like, okay, cool. I have time. I'll go to the bathroom and I'll whatever. And I came back and um an announcement was made for folks who are pre-boarding to queue on the left side. And so a gentleman was in front of me, perceived gentleman who looked non-disabled. Um, and then I was behind him. And then there was this perceived, because I don't know how people identify, woman who was looking for the pre-board line and she was directed to stand behind me. Then the airline, Alaska Airlines, took someone in a wheelchair, took them down, and they told the gentleman in front of me to wait, like just wait for the wheelchair to come back up, and then we'll report the rest. And so then we're waiting, and the woman behind me goes in front of me and is checked into the plane, and I was like, Excuse me, we're all in the pre-board line, right? This gentleman is actually in front of me." And the other attendant was like, "Oh, well, we asked for you to stand on this side." I said, "Per the instructions," because again, I'm a Virgo. We were told to stand right here on the left side. And that's where we are standing. And she apologized really quickly because Alaska Airlines is pretty good in the big scheme of things. And checked in, um, checked us in. And we go into to the plane. And I just said out loud, I'm like, people just don't realize that disability is visible and invisible, that people in the pre-board line are not in a wheelchair. And that guy was like, yep, happens to me all the time. And he had on a walking like leg brace. And it was a clear brace. So and he couldn't really see it. So he can go with whatever pant he's wearing, right?
Hmm.
Or whatever outfit, right? He's wearing. And he's like, yeah, no, it happens to me all the time. And and those are the things that are incredibly frustrating because people don't realize that was yesterday. This is me outside. People don't realize how off-putting it is, particularly when you follow the process and you're still the problem, right? So it's just like I did what y'all told me to do, and somehow I'm still wrong. I get that, like when I flew to the destination, it was a 1 day trip in and out. When I flew to the destination, I used my cane. Was not feeling great in the morning, and on the way back, I probably should have used my cane, but I was given flowers. I was given flowers in a bag, and and I had to carry that. And with the cane, it was like too much for me to do, so I was carrying flowers. And remember, I have one shoulder that's not working, so I have my bag on one shoulder, and then if I used my cane and then I was holding the flowers, it would just throw me off. And so it was like the best survival tactic for me. But regardless if I have a cane or not, I'm in the line. I identified myself earlier. And it's that exhaustive additional work where someone wants to remind you that you are not validated, seen, or heard. which is just really unnecessary.
It's so frustrating having to constantly validate yourself and not having other people really just believe you. And
Yeah.
it's really so simple. And for whatever reason, it's really hard for a lot of people to understand. What policies and changes, or what policies to how do you say the word?
Legislation.
Legislation. What policies to oh my God.
Okay. Words are hard. There's times where I'm just like, I know you have degrees, but how do I say this word?
It's since like all my diagnoses, brain fog and words and like being able to retain information has been so hard for me and it's so frustrating. But here
Yeah,
we are. This is the
it
reality of it.
is. It is. The reality is someone else is always here to support you, or they know what they're saying, you know? And so legislation is the word of the day.
We're going to work on that one. What changes do we really need to be paying attention to?
So I think it's important to note that the Americans with Disabilities Act didn't happen until 1990. And so people don't either care about it, don't know about it, or they know about it and feel like it doesn't matter because it's not really, it depends on where you are with how it's enforced. It's there, but the view of people with chronic illness and disability is a whole other thing. So part of what needs to happen is that people need to understand ADA and follow that and know from that disability is not just someone who uses a wheelchair. It can be, but that's not the only thing. Um, when it comes to like in general, I feel that as a country, we could just do a better job of creating supportive spaces and places so that everyone feels that they're valued, right? And so, government wise, there's the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission office, which I think is on its way out per this administration. There's ADA, obviously, there's Department of Fair and Equal Housing that provides support, the policy and the legislation for people with more intersectionality, more oppression, but all that's under attack. And so, typically I would say other things of what needs to happen, but we have to be vocal to keep what we already have to kind of get back to where we were, where things weren't that great, but at least better than where they are today.
So, when going into allyship, how can white people become better allies to people of color and the BIPOC community?
Yeah, totally. So allyship is a waste of time. I hate it. Stop being an ally. We don't need it. And this is and this is because allyship allows for comfort. Allyship allows the person to do what they want to do when they want to do the thing, right? So I voted for Barack Obama. I voted for Kamala Harris. I gave money to a bail fund during the um, murder of George Floyd time. I decided to give money to um, the prison fire crew this year instead of another group, right? Like it's those things which we appreciate, right? It's important, but it's the picking and choosing, right? So for example, Columbus Day in this country is also Indigenous Peoples Day.
Hmm.
There are some white people who are like, I'm not gonna do that. It's always gonna be Columbus Day. Not realizing like the accomplice or the advocate, the other person who's moved past allyship, that they can say, yeah, I've always celebrated Columbus Day, or maybe I have a tradition around it, but I'm going to start saying Indigenous Peoples Day because Christopher Columbus was a colonizer.
Hmm.
Genocide happened as a result of that, right? I'm not gonna support that anymore. And that's because when you move past allyship, you're realizing the goal is to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is the experience of someone who's not part of the dominant group, like the Black person, or you're in a male dominated space and you're the only woman that's there, right? Like you have to realize that that is where the work is. That's where someone is brushing their teeth, putting on their deodorant, as much as taking time to check their bias and check their privilege. It's saying things that you don't necessarily know that you want to say. It's fully knowing how to use your privilege to advocate for someone who has less privilege than you. And it's making sure your words and your actions match. We say being an accomplice because folks are like, well, an accomplice is like committing a crime. Yeah, rob that bank with me. So I'm seen. Be willing to hop in the car. Know what you're risking so that I'm seen. Like, be committed. That's when someone commits a crime and they're an accomplice to a crime, they were committed to that action. They were committed to doing the work. They were committed to all the risks that it takes. Because if you identify as a white person and you're tuning into this, overall, you have a pretty good life.
Yep.
You have a pretty good life. And I don't care if you're saying, well, I didn't have this when I grew up, or I don't make X amount of money. What I can guarantee you is you can go to that same emergency room and you will be given care. And I will have to fight for the care. And I may have more privilege than you, right? And I have to fight for that care. I can guarantee you that that white person will get pulled over and told to slow down and maybe a speeding ticket and not murdered or maimed or arrested. I can guarantee you that that person can get promoted at work without having to do much just because of the color of their skin, right? And so there's risk in when being an accomplice or an advocate that's there saying, I may lose this power that I have of being a white person because the other white people who like to be comfortable aren't, they may not like me as much because I'm realizing that's really fucked up that my whiteness is the reason why I should have the social determinants of health. What are the social determinants of health? A livable community, a walkable community, access to a grocery store, transportation, a livable wage, access to healthcare, access to education, all these things. They are all barriers to me. So I would love the benefits of white supremacy. I would love to be in that position where my country, my workplace, my society, the cafe, the airport is designed for me to thrive as much as the white person. So being an accomplice or an advocate is saying, what I have, everyone else should have that doesn't have the same complexion as me.
White privilege shouldn't even be a thing. It shouldn't even be a word or a concept.
Well, unfortunately, it has to be just like white supremacy, right? Because that's the benefit of it. White privilege is said specifically because it's a privilege I don't have. I have pretty privilege. I have light skin privilege. I have educational privilege, right? But I don't have white privilege. I don't. So, you know, I just, again, I talk a lot about the air, not a lot. There's some decent stories in there about the airport, but like, again, going back to pre-board, I'll go and pre-board. I won't have my cane, but disability is always with me. And I'll be told, no, it's not time for you to board yet because I'm in first class or business class. So why would I be pre-boarding? Because I'm in first or business class, right? So I have to wait for my group. And then even when I get on the plane, finally make it on the plane, never fails because I'm first, because I pre-board. The flight attendant between first business class and different levels of economy always moves to the side because they expect me to go all the way to the back of the plane. But I'm in seat 2A, bitch. Yeah. hmm And so, and that's because of what I look like, right? Yeah. Yep.
I,
Yep.
I,
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I know it happens a lot, and I know it's so common with so many people. It's just we are going backwards so quick, and it's frustrating. It's terrifying. I'm absolutely sickened that our country can put a racist, homophobic piece of shit into office like this.
Rapist, convicted felon. Yeah.
The list goes on.
But this is why, again, I say white supremacy is all around because there's comfort in knowing that it's a white guy who runs the country. There's comfort in knowing that it's a man running this country. There's comfort in knowing that a white guy doesn't have to be held accountable for their actions. So much so that the idea of a woman who's already been VP, the idea of a woman who is not white, because also remember, Hillary Clinton also ran, and people don't want a woman to run this country. But that's the benefit of white supremacy,
It pisses me off.
as it should, and use that to use your privilege and ways to, you know, support other folks. Like having me here on your podcast is definitely one way to do it.
So that's a question. How do people use white privilege to benefit?
Yeah, so it's just realizing your privilege. Your privilege is a roadmap to how you can support other people. Right. So when I was in a position to work with all these really, I mean, I still do, but when I was doing a lot more work and making a lot more money, I was able to give a lot more of my time, right? My pro bono time. So, and be in spaces and places. But here's the thing, it's free 99 to say, no, that's not okay. It's free 99 to say, why are all these people we're hiring? Why are they all guys? It's free 99 to say, oh no, or this person was in line in front of me, right? It's easy to do those things. It's realizing within your privilege, there's things you can do every day, big or small. You don't have to do big things every day. I'm not asking you to start a revolution. I'm not asking you to protest, but you can say, you know what? I know it's Black History Month, but I'm still going to buy from this one Black vendor I bought something from um, forever in subsequent months. I am very upset at Target for ending their DEI stuff as an ally, but I'm going to be an accomplice and I'm only going to buy Black owned or Black or Brown owned products, you know, at Target. Or I'm going to do what that person wants me to do, which is they're like, hey, you know, buy stuff directly from me now instead of going to Target. Take the time to figure that out. It's not hard. What a lot of people fail to realize is that I am a Black disabled woman in a white world. And that's why I purposely say it in the book.
Hmm.
I have had to learn how to acclimate to white dominant culture because that's the only place in which I would have success. If I were in a position of being a stereotypical Black person that white people find comfort in, I wouldn't be on this podcast. I wouldn't have a book. I wouldn't have a doctorate. I wouldn't have these things, or they wouldn't expect me to have these things. They would expect a negative stereotype of me. But I have been in white spaces since I've been in preschool. So I've been learning since preschool how to be in white spaces. The other person in my preschool class was my twin sister, you know? And so when I graduated K through 8, there were only 4 Black families. I was one of them. So, yeah, I've had to learn white dominant culture. So, all we are asking when it comes to dismantling white supremacy is that you just use your privilege for good. It would be nice if you took the time to understand what it's like to be a Black person in America, an AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander in America, an Indigenous person in America. It would be nice for you to do that, but we're not even asking for that. We're asking for you as white people to realize, in general, our lives are different. White dominant culture runs America, society, cultures, the workplace, again, all the way down to the cafe. We're just asking you to use that, share that privilege that you have with us so we all eventually can have the same privilege. I'm not asking for Black supremacy. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for the same treatment as white people.
Take off the blinders a little bit and really realize what it's like I mean, we'll never realize what it's like or understand what it's like to be in your position, in your shoes, but the more understanding that we can try to have and anything that we can try to do to make it more comfortable
Mhm.
for marginalized communities is what we can do, I guess, at this point.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so we kind of talked about dismantling white supremacy.
We got it in there.
Um, what about in like specifically in the disabled spaces?
Yeah. So when we talk about dismantling white supremacy and disability and disabled spaces, there's a hierarchical structure there. So people feel that if you are an oppressed group, you can't discriminate. You 100% absolutely can discriminate. You can, right? It happens. So there can be a person who feels that because I have dynamic disability, I have invisible, can't see it, invisible, you can see it, especially when I'm using my cane, and depending on the day, that my life is easier than theirs, right? Because maybe they have something else going on. There can be people, as I mentioned earlier, that have EDS who feel I have it easier than them because they're making stereotypes and biases, right? And that's what happens when we're discriminating against each other. And so I would say two things. One, realize we are not devoid of ableism. We're not devoid of racism, homophobia, transphobia, any of those things. And then second, the kindness that we extend people who aren't disabled is the same kindness we have to extend to each other in the disability community. It's the same thing because we are not a monolith. We all don't have the same lived experience. And so sometimes we have to educate to say, like, yeah, I know this person likes this thing or these captions or this whatever, but I don't. I prefer to not use them. Right. So if we think about being visually impaired, being having limited vision, low vision, blindness, how it's a spectrum. There are people who have limited vision who should probably use a cane, maybe, but they don't want to.
Right.
So if someone who does use a cane, you can't say, well, you're not as blind as me because you're not using the cane, right? Like, it's preference. There are people who are hard of hearing. I'm hard of hearing. There are people who are hard of hearing, they're and or part of the deaf community, and they don't know ASL, right? Or they've chosen to get a cochlear implant. They are still part of the community. They have a different lived experience, right? But one decision isn't bad and the other one is good, right? It comes down to the personal preference. So the acceptance and the kindness that we can have with non-disabled individuals, we need to be reminded of that in the disability community too.
It's not the disability Olympics here. Like we're not competing against each other
Right.
to see which is better or worse or whatever you want to call it. Like everything is equal in a different experience.
We can guarantee that wherever anyone is on their chronic illness or disability journey, that they have felt alone.
Mhm.
And we all feel alone. And that right there is a factor. There's been a time where a loved one, a family, friend didn't understand what you were experiencing or what you needed. Yeah, we all have that. So there's a lot more common things that are there, just like dismantling any form of white supremacy within or without the disability community.
Right now, it's kind of hard to find a lot of hope and joy for the future. What is your take on that? Like, how do we find some hope and some joy?
So Donald can't take away your joy. No one can take away your joy. No one can take away your joy. So that's something that you should protect, whether it's 30 seconds of the day or the whole day or the whole week. It's finding ways to tap into joy. So my mantra and my trademark saying is keeping amazing. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, what what I navigate with chronic illness, pain, disability is not easy. And yet here we are sitting upright, having this conversation,
Yep.
right? And, taking a shower is something to celebrate. There's joy in that, or being able to bathe or saying no to something or accepting the fact that, yeah, sorry, you couldn't make it to the birthday party because you knew if you went to push yourself to go to that birthday party, it would be hard. It's nothing short of amazing to navigate healthcare in America. These are things that can and should be constantly celebrated. So it's holding on to that joy. It's maintaining being amazing. It's finding laughter in something that is traumatic, which is living, in these bodies. Um, and that's how we keep moving forward because stuff is gonna get worse. It's definitely gonna get worse, but we have to keep moving forward.
Finding the little wins in each day. I really appreciate you being here, sharing your knowledge, experience, everything that you have to say. Your book, so damn good. I am the slowest reader in history, but
You don't have to never say you're a slow reader. Also, there's an audiobook too.
yeah,
So
true.
people can listen to the audiobook. It is me. If you like my voice, you're welcome, or I'm sorry. It's available, but the book is designed for people to read it however they want to read it. You don't have to read it through. can read it when you need it. You can just go to that chapter and, oh, thanks, major depressive disorder. That's how I feel. I'm going to read that chapter today. And that's fine, you know?
My favorite chapter so far, wait, let me find it. So I get it's the Karen one. The Karen are
Because
terrorists.
these Karens just turn into terrorists, which is a line from Energy by Beyonce.
See,
Hmm.
I need to listen to Beyonce more, I guess.
It's okay. You're a Swiftie. You don't need to. You're all right. All you have to do is just respect, those who like Beyonce. Beyonce and Taylor are friends. When their movies came out, they went to each other's premieres. Like it's not a competition.
No.
Swifties for some reason just well, honestly, if you want to know how
Yeah.
white supremacy works, it's looking at the Swifties, right? Because they are mad that someone has won a award. One other person was a black woman won. I don't remember this outrage when Harry Styles won, by the way. I'm just saying.
It's putting perspective on my own self too. Like I'm still learning every single day how to, I don't want to use the word ally. What's the word? Advocate or
Being an advocate or an
accomplice.
accomplice. Yeah, either one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and that's important too, to unlearn a lot of things that you were
Yeah.
taught and going in the right direction because boy, do we need the right direction right now.
We do. And so I hope, people get focused from this conversation or, looking at my book, White Supremacy is All Around. It's wherever books are sold. And I will say it's really important to um have reviews, particularly from the chronically ill, disabled community, because I wrote this book for people to feel validated, seen, and heard who have some part of my intersectionality. They're either, a BIPOC person, Black Indigenous person of color, a woman, disabled, someone who's just othered, right? They are oppressed. And then I wrote it for white people who've been doing the work since the murder of George Floyd to move past allyship, read these same stories, and see ableism, see colonialism, see how, you know, racism and all these things pop up and intersect, right? And so review it, copy and paste that review, put it everywhere. That signals to the publisher, it signals to these brands that, these books and these stories are important. And if we don't support these stories, it will increasingly become harder and harder to have more representative voices, Black voices, disabled voices, who are able to get these deals to write books.
Where can we find you online?
You can find me at Change Cadet, so the word change, CADET, so Change Cadet on all platforms, or the website. And you can DM me if you have any questions or concerns. It is me. I will reply when I do, because boundaries, but I will reply.
Thank you so much for being here and for being a part of this. It's so important to get these conversations out. And
Yeah.
a little part that I can do, I want to be able to do it. And like I said, it feels very overwhelming right now in this climate of the world. And
Yeah.
the more conversations, the more people that speak out, I feel like that's all we can do right now. And then pay attention to
Mhm.
what's going on and knowing where to put your energy and focus and where to not.
But disconnecting is not the plan because once you disconnect from what's happening with this regime, and I understand like health wise and doing all that, but it's still important to be informed in a digestible way. It doesn't have to be the full on
Right.
like fire hydrant thing, but a nice little garden hose, or a nice little trickle for your
Ooh,
orchid
I
or something
like
like that. But
that.
you still need to know, you still have to be informed because paying attention is how you can be prepared for what's coming.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I'm super excited to continue your book. I am gonna get the audiobook. I'm gonna throw that shit on in the car and just vibe
There you
out.
go. Yeah. Vibe out.
Please go follow Dr. Cadet, Change Cadet, read her book, get her book, review her book. All of the things you're gonna learn a lot. As well as follow the podcast, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. It's all Sick I Swear podcast. Thank you for listening in, and we'll see you next time.